Chris, and as Chris shared, these are ways that you communicate with us. And then once you are done with this webinar, if you are interested in receiving a certificate of attendance, we can give you a certificate for your participation, and you just simply need to email Chris Peppers at cpeppers@air.org to request a certificate. And as I mentioned the title when we started, providing administrative support for CCRS alignment, we know that this is an important area for administrators in the field, and knowing how to implement and incorporate the standards is very, very critical and important to our overall program success in a number of ways. And we are very fortunate this afternoon to have Andre Pacina, who is the principal at Fresno Adult School, to share what he has done in this area and that he has found to work most successfully for alignment with the CCRS standards at his school. We know there'll be great ideas that you can take from this presentation, but please know that at the end there'll be a brief opportunity for questions and answers and any other discussion and dialogue that for items that may or may not be covered in Andre's presentation. So with that, I want to thank you, Andre, for joining us this afternoon and for agreeing to share your experiences thus far with CCRS alignment and how you provided support as an administrator. And I'm going to now turn it over to you to get us going. Thanks, Andre.
Okay. Thank you, Chris and Sharice and Chris for helping with this. And first, I just want to let everyone know that's out there that it seems like we're at the end. That let me just switch this back. Hold on. I'm going to switch this all the way back. I think it's all at the end. There we go. You're going to get that? Sorry about that. I just want to let everyone know that at the beginning, this is a culminating work from myself and my team. And so really it's my team, which are the vice principals, the counselors, and the teachers have really done some outstanding work in starting to move this along. We're in our infancy, so there's a lot of stuff that we need to work on. So my whole goal is not only to share our perspective and the things that we've done, but also to get potential feedback from all of you and seeing what are some potential gaps and how we can learn together. So collaborating is a huge component of our work. I'm over here at Sacramento at the AB86 State Summit, so that's obviously the key theme for what we're doing. So as we go through this, I just want to make sure that you feel more than welcome to provide some insight as well. So let's go ahead and get started. And one of the things that I want to go through first is our learning objectives. So what are we going to do today? So the first is we want to explain the purpose of the college and career readiness standards and their alignment to the Common Core state standards, and also identify ways administrators can support the CCRS implementation. How do we analyze the model implementation plan and curriculum? So we'll be looking at Fresno Adult Schools implementation plan and curriculum. And then how do we develop the framework for a school-wide implementation plan? So the purpose of the college and career readiness standards. So I'm just going to give us a brief overview and what are they and how do they align to the Common Core state standards. So first, when I went to New Orleans along with my colleague Rain Bumate, we went to go learn about the college and career readiness standards. And this is some of the information that we pulled from here. I know Susan Pimentel did a webinar too on this. But the college and career readiness standards process was performed by Octay, and they sought the support of outsourcing it to StandardWorks, who created a process that was deliberative and multi-layered. It was evidence-based process, and the whole goal was to keep the validity of the Common Core state standards by using the Common Core state standards verbatim. So that's kind of key. So you'll hear me kind of harp on that a few times, that they are the Common Core state standards verbatim. So this is kind of the process that they went through. They gathered stakeholders. They pretty much split them into two areas, ELA and math, in their expertise content areas. They sought the advice of the Common Core state standards writers, and they also gathered feedback from adult education specialists throughout the nation. These are the three guiding questions that they had to create a framework for how they would look at and analyze the Common Core state standards and vet those to be able to come up with the salient standards for adult education. The outcomes were that the panelists bundled the selected standards into these 5 grade level groupings, and these groupings are based on the NRS levels, and then that the standards that were selected or that were omitted were primarily omitted when they were too specific, they were redundant, they were subsumed by other standards, or they were handled sufficiently in an earlier level. So the whole goal is, how do we take the Common Core state standards for adults who would be in our system for a lot shorter time, right, than being in school for 12 years, and for them to get key foundational academic standards, master those. So what are the college and career readiness standards, and what are they not? So they're not in any in order in which standards are to be taught. They're not directions about how instructors should teach the standards. They're not a full spectrum of the support interventions for students, so we need to look at how do we provide additional response intervention, RTI, for our students so they're able to be academically successful. They are not a curriculum, so we as states and programs will need to complement the standards with high quality curricula. And they are not a national federal set of mandates. So what they are, though, are a model set of evidence-based college and career readiness standards for use by state and local adult education programs to give us a framework for what might be taught. So if we were to summarize what those look like in ELA, literacy, and mathematics, these are kind of what we see in the college and career readiness standards, as well as the Common Core state standards, which, remember, are one and the same. Just the college and career readiness standards are a more streamlined, focused version for our adult learners. So in ELA and literacy, there are fewer standards, but the wording is identical. It's verbatim. For ASC, the focus is primarily 9th and 10th grade standards. The content and text are college and career ready. It's mainly focused on informational text standards. So those of you that are going through Common Core training at your districts, this would look very similar to what's happening there. The Common Core state standards that specify particular content, namely seminal U.S. documents, were selected, and expository writing is accentuated. On the mathematics side, we have many few standards. There's only about 31% of the Common Core standards in there. But again, the wording is verbatim. They drew most of the Common Core college and career readiness standards from the domains of algebra and functions, and the college and career readiness standards do not include the 54 STEM standards. So I know when we were in New Orleans, that was a question that popped up. Would it have been necessary to do so? And the common response was that our focus needs to be on getting our adults ready to transition into college. So with that said, I have a first checking for understanding, a little CFU, so some instructional strategies, right, that we use at Fresno Adult School, and I'm sure many of you guys use there in your schools themselves. And so the CFU is what the college and career readiness standards are a separate set of standards from the CC, the Common Core state standards. Is this true or false? So go ahead and answer that real quick. The college and career readiness standards are a separate set of standards from the Common Core state standards. Okay, looks like most of you are getting through that. And most of you got it right. The answer is false. Okay, remember that they're not a separate set of standards, but they are the same standards that are streamlined for our adult educators, our adult learners. So one of the things that you'll see me kind of chime on as we go through this this workshop is the need for us to be able to communicate to our leaders, our district leaders, that these are the Common Core state standards verbatim. It's just streamlined for our adult learners. So let's go ahead and continue here. Any other questions, anything before we move on in regards to that? Okay. So administrative support. So let's say this is really where I'm going to spend quite a bit of time. I just want to give you a brief overview of what the college and career readiness standards are, and these will be in the handout that's given. So how do we help our staff and leaders see the relevance? So one of the things that we need to remember is we need to understand where Common Core state standards derive from, and obviously that's where the college and career readiness standards will come from. So one of the things that I used as talking points, or to be able to express to my staff the need for us to move that to Common Core state standards first, and then when the college and career readiness standards came out, was what did it look like before Common Core state standards, and what does it look like now with Common Core state standards. So with that said, in the pre-Common Core state standards, we had instruction was loosely based on program area. For example, GED, each teacher would kind of do their own thing. They would, they might look at what the makeup of the GED was. I hope they did, but there wasn't really an instructional framework for them to work through, a set of standards other than what they would receive from, let's say, ETS, who would provide that information. High school was kind of the same way. CTE, very similar, based on the teacher's knowledge and what they felt was necessary for the students to be successful in their content areas of what they're teaching. Some adult schools used CTE content standards, and some adult schools might use CTE content standards at the time, but it wasn't necessarily all the way across. And then CASAS competency standards were used for ESL and some ASC courses, so that was used. Now, there was less rigor of high-stakes tests, for example, in CASAS, GED, and KC. KC really stayed the same, but in GED, we know now with the change in the 2014 versus the 2002 series that there's obviously a lot more rigor in that 2014 series. So now let's take a look at now that we're in Common Core, what does that look like and why are we there? So we need to move to Common Core because there's an exponential change in rigor of the GED. It's aligned to the Common Core state standards. So this is really one of the areas that was a huge paradigm shift for our GED teachers because, like I expressed before, they had pretty much been teaching whatever they felt was best needed. And at the time for the 2002 series, they did a great job. I mean, they were pretty much on point. Their graduation rates look great. But now that the 2014 series is here, after analyzing the test and actually taking the practice tests themselves, and as well as looking at what the expectations were, they realized that they also need to change their instruction. So another area was that we need to have instruction and curriculum be founded in a Common Core state standards. Now that those changes are there, we need to be able to have all of our instruction based on Common Core state standards. So there's also greater focus on literacy in all areas, including ESL. So I know that even though the college and career readiness standards don't have an ESL component, and I know that that was something that was brought up even in New Orleans when I went to the training, the one thing was that in our district we use the ELD standards, the 2012 adopted ELD standards, to help supplement those college and career readiness and Common Core standards. So again, that's a perfect example of how we need to use these standards interchangeably, right? And to look at what is needed to be able to provide high quality instruction for our students. We also need to look at the fact that it's important for us to have Common Core state standards, is because employers are asking for a highly skilled workforce, and a workforce that's has a great critical thinking skills. There's a need for transition to post-secondary options. I mean, that's one of the things that are being talked about today at AB 86. is how do we transition our students from pre-collegiate to collegiate. And also the AB 86 policy to expedite learning and transitions to post-secondary or career goals is will needed for us to have a more streamlined, more focused curriculum and a set of standards. So the Common Core standards provides us with an opportunity for that.
Andre, there's a
Okay.
question that Noberto has asked.
And I see that there. I was
His
just reading
question
it.
is it, all right, great.
Okay, is it correct to think and located with? Yes, I mean it could be like a nested component of Common Core. Yes, because we look at the Common Core standards as kind of like the overall framework, and then the college and career readiness standards is a more focused area, if that's what you're saying. Okay. No, thank you. And again, if you have any questions, please by all means chime in at any time. So now as we're looking, what were the changes at Fresno Adult School? Remember, this is in the context of our own school. So what changes took place? So back in 2010, when I arrived at Fresno Adult School, the previous principal, Sally Fowler, had already kind of, I want to say, saw what was coming down the line, and how we need to focus on specific areas and not so much have kind of this broader array of services. So we began to transition from multiple programs to 4 focus programs: ASC, CTE, ESL, and we also house our special ed 18 to 22 population. And we also began to align ourselves with key district initiatives, and those were 2 specifically, which are accountable communities. So those are PLCs. So if you hear me say accountable communities or ACs, that's your basic PLC. And also foundations, which is basically a instructional format to be seen or observed in the classrooms. So that happened between 2010 and 2013. We kind of worked on that and really began to get teachers to really think about a different way of instruction. We worked on some curriculum maps. We started to focus on content standards, and then lo and behold, we had Common Core kind of come into play. In 2013-14, kind of in transition of principal, when I became principal, I charged my team to really look at how do we provide focused professional learning to our teachers so they came out with tangible outcomes and products. So when I can totally recall the day when I was sitting in the principal's meeting and at Principals Institute, and our assistant superintendent said, we're going to have Common Core training for all teachers. I was emailing her before she could finish her sentence and asked that our teachers be a part of that. And so then I went up to her after the meeting and said, I want to make sure that you got that email and that our teachers are going to be a part of that. And our district has been very supportive, and they've always provided our staff, both full-time and part-time, with the opportunity to receive district Common Core training at every grade level. So that was kind of one of the key things that was helpful for us to get our teachers to move across, because at that point they saw the relevance in even students that they might be getting who wouldn't complete their credits at high school, but they would continue that instructional practice and using those standards as adults as well. And yes, the PowerPoint will be available, I'm pretty sure. And so the other thing we did was strategic site PL focused on college and career ready Common Core standards, and an implementation in the 4 areas. So the one thing that we looked at, and we'll look at that in the handout, so if you did not get the handout, make sure that you download that, because I'll go through that plan with you. But one of the things that I charged my team with was I didn't want my teachers to start the year without knowing what the plan was for their learning, why we were doing what we were doing, why we were going to have these huge paradigm shifts in their instruction without them seeing from point A to point Z. And so we began to have some very good conversations as an admin team. They weren't always pretty. We had some disagreements, But the one thing is we focused our decision making based on what was best for our students, how we could support our teachers so they were able to meet the expectations, and what we need to do as leaders ourselves to make sure that we provided those supports as much as possible. And then in 2014-15, we began that process again, and we had alignment of the Common Core state standards and college and career readiness standards and curriculum development, and you'll see an example of that. And we continued our strategic site level PL, focused on DOK and rigor, and we're continuing the district Common Core state standards training, including ELD, and I'll kind of talk about how we're doing it with ELD. So I have a question here. Were ESL teachers included in the training, and if so, how did you align the lowest ESL levels with college and career readiness standards and Common Core? Okay, that's a great question, Alex. So what we did initially was, and this was a learning mistake on our part, is we took our we tried to do it by NRS level, and so we figured that if a ESL beginning was, let's say, kindergarten, first grade, then those teachers would work with our ESL teachers work in those Common Core grade levels. What we found was that we had several teachers, like probably yourselves do, that teach multiple levels, wanted to also get training in, let's say, ABE1. So they went to a higher level Common Core training. And what their feedback was that they actually pulled more from there, and then they could differentiate the instruction to meet the needs of the beginning level students versus doing it the other way around. So they requested that they actually just go to secondary training versus going to the elementary training, and they found more benefit in that. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay. So are there any other questions here on this these changes before we move on? Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, and it's key investments for change. So this is kind of like a high-level overview of the way that we function at Fresno Adult and look at how do we gather key investments for change. Okay, definitely. So now what we looked at in our key investments for change is, if we look at this kind of nested circle, we have, at the very core, teacher support and direct student impact, right? That's kind of our target. That's where we want to go. But what are those elements that need to happen beforehand to impact that inner circle? So we look at, number one, what district support, PL, and resources can we get from our district to help us in pushing the work of getting teachers to come on board as practitioners of Common Core instruction, right, and the college career readiness standards. So like I explained earlier, we leverage the resources of the district's Common Core training. We partnered with our EL services department, and we had one of their administrators come and do specific training on our LTELs, our long-term English learners, and how we can meet their needs to move them to proficiency. We're also in the process of looking at how we can share data. So at that point, when we get students who are ELs within our own system, that we can see where they're at. So our ESL teachers or AB or even GED can have that information as well. Our district's very supportive, so usually if we ask for something, they will provide. So and I know that's not the case in every place, but again, remember that I talked about being aggressive in asking and really supporting it through data. And that's one thing that we do as well, is we look at our students are the parents of our K-12 students. So if we make an investment in those parents, then at the same time we're also investing in that K-12 students' academic success as well. Strong site admin. So this is back all the way to my previous principal, who she leveraged our resources. So I'm an English teacher by trade, so I took ELA. My colleague Rain is a mathematician by trade, so she focused on math. And now on my team, I have still Rain, who's a mathematician. I have Dr. Reyes, who's a SPED expert, so he focuses really on our SPED students. And I have Valerie Simpson, who is our CTE administrator, but also has a lot of great background in ABE, GED, so she also focuses on that as well. And so through all of our collective work, as well as in our next circle, our lead teachers, we really use those two elements to really help our teachers. So the lead teachers are those teachers who are paid through the district a supplemental contract to help guide the PLCs. And so they also participate in our ILT, or instructional leadership team, which is comprised of the lead teachers and admin. And they will give us really insight into what's happening in the classrooms. And so they really make a lot of the instructional decisions that take place along with our guidance, but it's not a top-down really decision-making process that happens at Fresno Adult School, but it's really more of a ground up. And so we really take information that's happening in the classroom and say, what resources do you need, especially during this implementation process. And then we look at the strategic site level PL to grow human capital. And so it's important that, as leaders, we really look at how do we increase the human capital on our sites. And so I have a quote there. I'm not going to read it, but basically Foulon and Hargreaves say that, we need to make an investment in order to see a return in our human capital. And so if we're not doing that, then we're not going to move the people that we lead. So this is key investments for change. This is kind of a more granular look at things. So again, the district support, I went ahead and looked at providing support for our full-time and part-time teachers through the district trainings. We also contracted with the Fresno County Office of Education, and I took my administrators to a training on Common Core. And we also work with our community college district, and they have some technology trainings that they pay for, and our teachers go to that as well. So you kind of have to just look out there and see what's there. Again, I kind of covered already the strong site admin and the investment in additional PL for our admin. That's the Common Core training, and a focus on the content strengths. And again, the lead teachers are those teachers who take the leadership role in the PLC, and they help us make decisions. Also, one of the things that we did too is and I'll kind of get this a little bit more into the training, was that as our teachers went through the professional learning last year, we also gave them opportunities to do walkthroughs without the administrators. So we worked with the lead teachers first, and we help calibrate with them on the walkthroughs. And as administrators, so if you can picture in your mind, it's the administrators and lead teachers, and we walk into classrooms and we kind of take a look and see, what's taking place with the tool that was used, and I'll share that as well with you. And then once the lead teachers were calibrated, they actually led the walkthroughs of the teachers. So as administrators, we took a step back. We weren't in that space. It gave the teachers an opportunity to learn, and also really lowered that effective filter, so they felt the ability to be honest and collaborate. And so that really moved our teachers pretty far. And then we had a site level PL, and again, that's the strategic and database driven. And the way that we did the PL planning was we looked at teacher and student surveys, we looked at academic data, we looked at district initiatives, we have our conversations with our CBOs, with our industry partners, and the list goes on and on. But we wanted to make sure that our planning was based on data. And then we focused on practical applications and the teacher walkthrough data. We looked at that. And our whole goal was not to have a lecture top-down approach, but we want to make sure that the PL is teacher-driven, that they're in the space working, they're designing lessons, they're sharing out, they're having that opportunity and ability to feel like they can experiment and fail, and that's okay because they're learning, and we're trying to refine the instruction through Common Core and the College and Career Readiness Standards. In the teacher support, the last component is we provide the teachers with tangible tools. So I didn't have this on here, and it's not necessarily a plug for this tool, but if you want it, you can always email me. It's a DOK wheel that allows teachers to see all of the various DOK elements, but also has question stems for it, and they use that for their lesson plan design. We did teacher-to-teacher learning through the A-season walkthroughs, and this year our administrators are doing one-on-one data chats and also group data chats with the PLCs. So and the way that they're doing that, it's not an I gotcha, it's not something that is to call out bad data, but it's really to look at and see where are the gaps and how can we help support, and are there trends in the PLC, and what do we need to do to help them to move them forward, or is there one teacher is doing a great job, and how do we leverage that teacher's great work in the classroom and with the students to be replicated in the other members, the other PLC. So with that said, and enough of my talking for this point, is I want to hear from all of you. What are you doing at these levels in your own site? What's going on there? So I'll give you about 90 seconds. You can go ahead and kind of put it in the general chat. What are you doing there in the at your school? And yes, I'll share the DOK wheel. I'll try to look for the URL so you can actually just take a look from there. Thank you, Marion. Is there anybody else that's doing anything out there that they see that's or something different to share with the group? Okay, that's great, Alex. So they're forming a committee to be able to look at how they can move the work towards the college and career readiness standard. That's great. Any others? Oh, great, Edgenuity. Yes, I know one of our local adult schools is using that as well. And so we don't use any online instruction at Fresno Adult School. We just use either direct instruction or it's one-on-one and independent study. I know I'm interested in looking at components of online learning. We do some blended learning programs with CTE, so that helps as well. But very interested, Allison, in the work that you're doing there. So the one thing that that my whole goal was here was to look at really what are the different elements that we've utilized to be able to really support the implementation of Common Core with at our schools. So looking at these various levels or tiers to really focus on helping the teacher, and so the teachers feel that there's a huge investment, right, in what they're doing, to ensure that they know that the work that they're doing is of value. And I think I skipped the slide, sorry about that. So this was the reflection. So anything else that you have, if you want to fill out any more reflections, I'll give you about 60 more seconds because it looks like we're doing pretty good on time. Anything else that you have investment-wise at your district where you are pushing the work across the Common Core implementation? I see one more person typing, so I'm going to wait until they are done so they can go ahead and share their information. So is there anything else? You're more than welcome to in this chat pod, and we'll continue as we go along. Please, by all means, share information, items, or investments that you're making at your own district to move the Common Core state standards along. Okay, so Roberto has a question. What was the multi-step, multi-level process you're describing mainly to work out how to implement the standards as opposed to just learning what the standards are? So I think it's both. One is, we have to have the multi-level process to be able to see how that learning is going to take place and how we have to have that framework first, and then of course the learning as well, right? So that's if that makes sense, that's kind of where we started, because we knew that with Common Core, we're building the plane as we're flying it. That's what we knew right from the beginning. We told them up front that we're learning alongside them. So that's something that they understood, that as we go through this, we're learning as a team. And I see one more, so I'm going to wait because we do have some time in the dialogue suite. Have you identified assessments for the various standards? So one of the things that, Rod, and that's a great question, what we've been doing is we've been creating assessments internally. So, for example, there's benchmarks that ESL teachers have in all levels. There's benchmarks that the ABE and GED teachers have at their levels. And CTE is currently working on benchmarks as well with the focus on writing. And that's because that's something that's ubiquitous, right, in all CTE programs, is the need to write, even in some of our surveys. Even at the most lowest levels of employment, they have to have some type of writing skills, and not only be able to write but read them as well, right? So that's where their focus is on. So it's internal, it's nothing external. There are external resources that are out there, but I'm sure so we've had through the district trainings the ability to have even some of the district supports look at the assessments and see where the gaps are at and help us with those. So that's where I kind of go again, is looking at what's around you. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so any other questions before we move on? So we're going to get to the plan. Thank you very much for all of your input. And by all means, you can continue to share in the general chat that's at the left. Just because I closed the chat box there doesn't mean that we can continue the dialogue. So now that we look at what does the implementation plan and curriculum look like, how do we build it so they come, right? So so before we begin, we need to know what did we do. So what we did is we needed to assess the current reality. So as leaders, we need to assess the current reality of our staff and students. So how do we do that? We did it through surveys. We wanted to see where they were at, and then at that point, that helped us to really plan out our college and career readiness standards implementation plan. It's important to see what the district resources are readily available to you and your site. So, and that's why, again, I say be aggressive. Be aggressive in seeking out those resources. My personal motto is, it doesn't hurt to ask, because the worst that they can say is no, right? So that's something that I always charge my leaders with, is you need to ask. And the worst case scenario is no, and then we never had it to begin with. We need to identify internal resources, and those are great teachers. When we all have great teachers at our site, they're doing some great things. They've probably been teaching for a while, and they have some great insights in how they're moving their students across, and we really look to those people to do that. So one of the things that we did this year was we made it available to teachers to apply to have a little bit of a leadership component, and those are lead teachers, and they had to demonstrate that they were moving their students along in the classroom, and we had some great teachers step up to the plate, and they're the ones that are really going to start leading the professional learning from this point on. We also need to create a balanced instructional leadership team, both teachers and admin, to help drive the work. It can't be just a top-down approach. It needs to be really a collective work. And this kind of item here, this graphic just shows that, again, current resources plus student data plus human capital is what builds our strategic plan. So if you downloaded the document, I'm going to actually refer to those. So there's 2 plans there. Yes, I can give you a sample of the surveys that we sent. So just make sure to email me, and then I'll go ahead and send that out to you. So let's go ahead and take a look at the plans real quick. And on the slides, they're obviously kind of small. So I included them in those handouts, and you can look at them as we go along. And the first one, if you look on the left, or if you're looking at the document itself on top, that's kind of like a high-level graphic just to show the teachers where we're going. So notice that college and career readiness standards are there, and that was kind of our first introduction to them. And so because we wanted them to really know that language as well, not just Common Core, but college and career readiness standards. So the focus for this was engaged students. That's in the center. In that, we looked at the different elements that we would look at. So we were going to tie it to standards. We're also going to tie it to the CSDPs for evaluation and professional growth, and we're also going to tie it to our content. So that's kind of like those outer circles. And then in the purple, the things we're going to look at are inquiry, engage students through questioning, and engage students through rigor. And then technology is something that's always used now. So we're looking at technology at all times. And the overarching goal is that we're transitioning. We're transitioning students either internally from a AB1 to AB2 class, or even externally from a GED to post-secondary. And that's our goal, and that's why we're really looking at how we engage our students. So if you look at the calendar there, you have really, it's sectioned off into 3 quarters. Quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. And even though you see only kind of these dates of like August 7th through 8th, and then September 27th, November 12th, there's a lot of learning that's taking place even below that. There's another layer below that. This was kind of just a high level so the teachers could see where we're going for the entire year. And notice that everybody has a responsibility in the learning that's going to be taking place. So in year 2, which is this year, we went ahead and we looked at how do we continue to refine the work that we're doing with implementation of college and career readiness standards. So on the right-hand side, the kind of DOK 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, teachers are looking at how do they move their lessons from a 1 to 2, a 2 to 3, a 3 to 4. Still with student engagement through inquiry and rigor being an underlying element, right? So we're not going to move away from our PL from last year, but we're going to continue it now through our lesson planning and design. And now this year, our teachers on the first and third Thursdays of every month meet for PL after school from 3 to 4:30 in between our day and night programs. And they all meet as a collective group of teachers, all subject areas, and they work on how do they move their lessons from a 1 to 2, and then we're almost ready for 2 to 3 and a 3 to 4. So at the end of this month, we'll have our first teacher walkthroughs, and then they're going to measure how do the lessons look. Are they moving lessons from a 1 to 2? And do we see evidence of that? And then they'll come back and they'll look at the data, and then they'll begin to refine their learning through that process. So are there any questions so far? Okay, the last part, because we're almost running to the end of the session, we really look at the work being teacher driven. We reestablished the ILT. We're strategic in our professional learning by both admin and lead teachers. We do teacher walkthroughs, which are key. The teacher walkthroughs are key, and now it's the data chats. So I talked about a walkthrough tool that the teachers used before. That's included in your packet as well. It looks like this. It's the Foundations, District Foundations walkthrough tool. But what happened was the teachers said, we can't really measure engagement this way. So I told them, well, why don't you guys create your own tool? So we kind of facilitated the meeting, but the teachers were the ones who gave us all the information, and they created this tool. And they said, this is how we're going to be able to measure it. And so they use this tool actually to do their walkthroughs. Now, after this quarter, they're going to revise the tool so it becomes more refined in measuring actual instruction a little bit with a little greater focus. But teachers used their walkthrough tool that they developed, and it was aligned to their learning, and they were able to get back data from what was going on in their PL. So with that said, I come to the last checking for understanding, and it's a chat thread that's here. What are potential gaps or strengths in this plan that you see, or the planning that we have here, and potentials even within your own site for what's taking place and how we need to implement college and career readiness standards? And you can go ahead and put your responses in the chat box on the right. There you go with the green arrow. Okay, so thank you, Alex. Time is a big obstacle for us as well. We do have quite a bit of part-time teachers. So what we do is, and it's something we struggle with, I'll be honest with you, what we're doing is really encouraging all of our full-time obviously have to come. Part-time, if they're part-time, they're also required to come as well. But we do have some part-time teachers that work up until the evening, and then they come in the evening to work. So we're actually working with them to look at some online modules to help them out in being able to access that information. And then Renee, it is our lead teachers doing walkthroughs with our admin first to calibrate, and then they walk with the teachers without the admin to ensure that that they that it's just teachers walking through classrooms by themselves. And it is done on a rotation basis, but all teachers do walkthroughs. Yes, it is a strength is the engagement of all staff, and really teachers, like let's say an AB teacher picks up some great resources from CTE and vice versa. So it really helps. That's one of our big goals. Okay, and that's the thing, Rod, is that yes, it is true that the college and career readiness standards don't have everything. So remember at the beginning of the workshop, it's a framework, but not the total guide to curriculum and instruction, right? So our teachers are still going to look at how what's best for their classroom, right? And pull that out. Even if we look at Common Core state standards as a whole, we'll probably still see some gaps, right? So we want to make sure that we're mindful of using multiple resources. LaRonda, what we did was the CBA. We use the CBA language to be able to help frame the work. So it's 4 hours in our CBA, 4 hours a month that they outside of the contracted day that they use for professional learning. But every district's different. So yeah, you would have to get creative in seeing what you do. We are trying to move these to online courses as well, so teachers are able to access them as well. And it is a lot to ask. We're not doing WAS this year, thank goodness, but we are an AB 86 like everyone else, and it is a lot of time. But also in conveying our message and what we're doing to really provide intervention and instruction and PL for our teachers. Actually, our community college partners are very interested in the work as well. So contract bargaining agreement. So it's very important that that we look at the benefits investment. Oh, great. Thanks, Rod. Thank you for the information. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next because of time, because we're getting closer to the time of the presentation being done. You can continue your chats on the side, on the left-hand side. And that is a great question as well, Mark. How do you apply that to independent study? And our independent study teachers are also grappling with this, and I'm going to actually get into this right now, curriculum development. So in the curriculum development, we really look at 3 areas. How do we create complex text, tax, and talk? And so for independent study, that's the talk is a huge issue. So one of the things our teachers are looking at is actually having an online component where students get online to do discussions on specific topics. And the independent study teachers see a great need to revamp their antiquated curriculum, and by them meeting with other teachers really not only provides a new sense of energy, but also a sense of urgency to get that done. So I just gave you an exemplar of the curriculum development that's taking place. This is ELA, GED ELA. So if you see there's a college and career readiness standards that are embedded in that. And this is for descriptive writing, and it gives a 2-week suggested time. I actually give you the whole thing in the upload, so you want to take a look at that. That's there. And really what I wanted just to show you was an example, what's going on, what the teachers are building. And so this is what they're using to be able to design their curriculum. So just real quick, because we are coming close to the time being up, developing the framework, making all the pieces fit. Again, in implementing college and career readiness standards, we need to identify staff and student needs. We need to identify the instructional gaps, the student data and walkthroughs. are a great way to do that. We need to identify curricular gaps, lesson analysis, and I put a lesson analysis template there in your packet as well. And we need to create a strategic plan with the focus. So again, this is a framework that we use to plan. Okay, what's the focus? What will my focus be each quarter? What's the role of the lead teacher? What's the role of the AC, the admin? What products are they going to produce out of this? What tools will the teachers need to be successful? And what are the measures that we'll use to make sure that they've mastered, right, what's gone on in the PL? And it might be for a quarter, it might be for the entire year. But those are the components or elements that we utilize in our professional learning planning. Okay, and so for the closure, in closing, you know, again, these are learning objectives. This is what we had here as we would go over. And remember that the college and career readiness standards are in alignment with the Common Core State Standards, that our curriculum should be framed by the standards, that as leaders we need to seek out district resources, and as leaders we need to build the human capital at our sites. So that investment, and I know it's tough, I know the time gathering everybody together is tough, but the return on that investment is huge. So having that as well is key. And that's it. So are there any questions, anything that you might have?
All right, well, thank you very much, Andre, for your presentation this afternoon on aligning the college and career readiness standards and administrative support to do that. As you see on this final slide page, we do have an area for final comments or questions. We are beyond the hour of our time, but you will see that open empty chat all the way to your right mid-screen. And we also have the PowerPoint that Andre created and shared with you that you can download here. On the bottom of this page in the center, you see the green arrow pointing there. And we would also invite you to complete an evaluation form of our admin webinar today, and to be sure and check the CalPro calendar for the next administrative webinar. And it will be on the topic of mentoring and induction in an adult education program. And we are thankful again for your time today. Andre, thank you very, very much. It was very, very informative, and I believe we all learned a lot about ways to approach supporting our teachers with aligning the college and career readiness standards. Thanks, everyone, for your time. And again, please share. And we will leave this open for about 5 more minutes if you have any final questions or comments to type in there. And then please do take the evaluation. Bye-bye.
Okay, for those of you still there, I put the Mentoring Minds DOK wheel just in case if you, the link for that as well, and be more than willing to share anything out if you have anything, that if you need any resources. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like everybody's done with their comments, so I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.